a $2,000 hospital bill, a no-interest payment option, and one deadline that can turn the whole thing into more than $3,500 in debt. You thought you were paying the hospital. You were actually opening a credit card. And that is the part most people don't realize until it is too late. You were sitting in a hospital gown when someone from billing asked if you wanted to take care of the bill today. That phrase sounds harmless. It sounds like administration. It sounds like the thing you say to move the appointment along, get the procedure done, and leave the building. But in a lot of medical offices, take care of it today does not mean a payment plan with the hospital. It means credit, not charity care, not a final insurance-adjusted bill, not a low-cost arrangement with the provider, a credit card. CareCredit, owned by Synchrony Bank, is one of the biggest names in medical credit cards in America. Alphaeon Credit operates in the same world, financing procedures patients cannot pay for up front. And the pitch usually does not arrive when you are calm, rested, and comparison shopping financial products at your kitchen table. It arrives when you are scared. It arrives when your kid needs dental surgery, or your spouse is in pre-op, or you are sitting under fluorescent lights in a paper gown, trying to understand why the number on the clipboard is somehow higher than your rent. The most dangerous financial product in the room may not be the bill. It may be the help offered right after the bill. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about the financial products that get slipped into ordinary life when people are too overwhelmed to fight back. And if you have ever looked at a medical bill and thought, I have insurance, so why does this still feel like I'm being mugged by a spreadsheet? Make sure to subscribe, because this one is not about budgeting. It is not about whether someone should have saved more. It is not about telling sick people to read faster, ask better questions, or somehow negotiate like a contract lawyer while wearing a hospital wristband. This is about a system that found one of the most vulnerable moments in American life and asked, what if we turned that into a loan origination opportunity? Here's the thing. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has warned that medical credit cards and medical financing products can replace low or no-cost provider payment plans. In plain English, the cheaper option may exist, but the credit card is the one placed in front of you, and that changes everything. The old version was, you owe the hospital money, the hospital can put you on a payment plan. The new version is, you owe the hospital money, the hospital can introduce you to a bank. And once that happens, your medical bill stops being a medical bill. It becomes consumer debt. It can carry a promotional no-interest offer. It can come with deferred interest. It can charge rates around 26.99% APR. And if you do not pay the full promotional balance by the exact deadline, the interest you thought you avoided can come roaring back from day one. Not from the day you missed the deadline, from the day you were sitting in the clinic thinking someone was helping you. No interest is the phrase your brain hears. If paid in full is the phrase your bank account pays for. The part that should make your stomach tighten is this. The CFPB found that Americans use deferred interest medical credit cards and medical loans for almost $23 billion in healthcare expenses from 2018 to 2020. Those products generated about $1 billion in deferred interest. $1 billion, not medical care, interest. So when I say a $2,000 hospital bill can become $3,500 or more, that is not a nightmare scenario built for a thumbnail. That is the business model showing its teeth. Imagine a patient named Danielle. She has insurance. Not great insurance because this is America, but insurance. She goes in for a procedure. Nothing exotic, nothing experimental. The kind of thing a doctor calls routine, which is a word that becomes less comforting the moment the bill arrives. Before insurance has fully processed the claim, someone at the provider's office tells her there may be a balance. Maybe it is $2,000. Maybe it is presented as her estimated portion. Maybe the phrase is out-of-pocket responsibility, which sounds official enough that most people stop asking questions. Then comes the offer. There's a way to take care of it today. That sentence is the trap door. Not, would you like to apply for a revolving line of credit issued by Synchrony Bank? Not, would you like to compare this against our in-house payment plan or financial assistance policy? Not, would you like to wait until your insurer finishes adjudicating the claim? Take care of it today. That is emotional language disguised as administrative convenience. If someone offers you a financial product while you are waiting for medical care, are you really shopping or are you complying? Danielle is not thinking like a borrower. She is thinking like a patient. She wants the appointment to continue. She wants the surgery done. She wants the pain to stop. She wants to not be the person holding up the line because she does not understand a finance agreement while someone in scrubs is waiting. So she signs. And now the provider gets paid. The balance moves off the provider's books. The bank has acquired a new customer, and Danielle has gone from owing a medical provider to owing a credit card issuer. Here's what most people don't realize, that change is not cosmetic. Hospitals and doctors' offices may offer payment arrangements that are low interest, no interest, or connected to financial assistance. Credit cards are different. Credit cards have cardholder agreements, promotional windows, minimum payments, late fees, interest formulas, and consequences that belong to the banking system, not the healthcare system. And that is the trick. The debt begins in a place where trust is assumed. Then it gets transferred into a place where extraction is standardized. The provider gets to say it gave you an option. The bank gets to say you agreed. And the patient gets to discover the difference later, usually after the no-interest period expires. The phrase "no interest for 18 months" sounds simple. It sounds like the interest is gone. But with deferred interest, the interest is not gone. It is waiting. It is sitting behind the curtain with a calculator. Deferred interest is not waived interest. It is interest holding its breath. If the promotional balance is fully paid by the deadline, fine. The interest may never hit the account. But if even a small amount remains after the promotional period ends, the lender can charge interest retroactively from the original purchase date. From day one, not from the deadline, not from the remaining balance only, from the beginning of the transaction. Here is the counterintuitive part. You can make every required minimum payment on time and still trigger the deferred interest bomb, because the minimum payment is not necessarily a payoff schedule. It keeps the account current. That is not the same thing as getting you safely across the promotional finish line. So a patient can make payments, stay current, try to be responsible, and still reach the end of the promotional period with a balance remaining. Then the interest appears. This is why deferred interest is so powerful. It does not require the borrower to behave recklessly. It only requires the borrower to misunderstand one deadline, one balance category, or one phrase. No interest if paid in full is not the same as no interest. Those extra words are doing a lot of work. They are the hinge between a payment plan and a punishment. The trap is not that you ignored the bill. The trap is that paying the bill normally may still not be enough. So let's walk through the machine. Step 1. You receive medical care, dental care, vision care, or another health-related service. Step 2. A bill appears or an estimate appears and the number is too big to comfortably pay today. Step 3. Someone inside the provider's office offers financing. Step 4. The offer focuses on monthly affordability, not the total cost if the promotional period fails. Step 5. The phrase "no interest" does the emotional work. Step 6. The fine print adds the actual condition, if paid in full by the deadline. Step 7. The provider gets paid. Step 8. The patient gets a statement. Step 9. The promotional clock starts ticking. Step 10. If the balance is not fully paid, the interest that was sitting quietly in the background can come back from the original purchase date. That is the sequence. Notice what is missing. There is no calm moment where the patient says, "Before I sign this credit agreement, has my insurance fully processed the claim?" There is no guaranteed pause where someone says, "You may qualify for financial assistance or charity care." There is no big red warning that says, "The minimum payment shown on your statement may not be enough to avoid deferred interest." There is no slow, transparent comparison between an in-house payment plan and a third-party credit card. There is just the counter, the form, the immediate bill, the need to make the discomfort stop. And this is where it gets interesting. Speed is the product. Fast approval, fast payment, fast exit, fast relief. But insurance is slow. Billing corrections are slow. Financial assistance screening is slow. Charity care applications are slow. Negotiating a bill is slow. So the system makes credit fast and everything that could reduce the bill slower, harder, or easier to miss. When the expensive option is instant and the cheaper option is hidden behind paperwork, that is not convenience. That is a funnel. And when one path is easy and the other path requires paperwork, phone calls, portals, hold music, and emotional stamina, that is not a neutral choice. That is design. Here's what most people don't realize. Sometimes the worst thing you can do with a medical bill is take care of it today. Sometimes the bill should not be paid immediately. Sometimes it should wait until insurance finishes processing. Sometimes it should be challenged. Sometimes the amount is wrong. Sometimes the provider has a financial assistance policy that could reduce or erase the bill. Sometimes an in-house payment plan would be cheaper. But the medical credit card solves the wrong person's problem first. It solves the provider's collection problem. It solves the lender's customer acquisition problem. It does not necessarily solve the patient's affordability problem. It just changes the form of the debt. And that changes everything. A medical bill is messy. Credit card debt is clean. Medical bills can be disputed as medical bills. Credit card balances are enforced as credit card balances. Medical billing has insurance, coding, provider policies, financial assistance, charity care, and negotiated rates. Credit card billing has due dates, APRs, minimum payments, fees, and credit reporting. So when your bill gets moved from one system to the other, you may lose leverage without realizing you had leverage in the first place. That is the part that should make people pause, because the original medical bill may not even be final. If insurance has not processed the claim, the number at the counter is not necessarily the number you actually owe. If the provider has not screened you for financial assistance, the number may not reflect what you could be eligible for. If the bill contains an error, financing it too early can lock you into a fight with the wrong institution. You are no longer just asking the hospital to fix the bill. You are asking everyone to unwind a credit transaction. And suddenly everyone looks very busy. A wrong hospital bill can sometimes be corrected. A credit card balance is much better at pretending the mistake never happened. Now, to be fair, not every person who uses CareCredit gets crushed. Some people use the card, pay the promotional balance in full before the deadline, and pay no interest. That happens. But a product can be useful for one group and predatory for another group at the same time. A trap does not need to catch everyone. It only needs to catch enough people. And deferred interest is built for the people who almost make it, almost paid it off, almost understood the deadline, almost realized the minimum payment was not the payoff plan, almost waited for insurance, almost asked about charity care, almost kept a medical bill from becoming bank debt. The profit lives in the almost. So let's do the math. Start with a $2,000 medical bill. The offer says no interest if paid in full within 18 months. The APR is 26.99%. That means the interest is not disappearing during those 18 months. It is accumulating in the background. At 26.99% per year, interest on a $2,000 balance can add up brutally fast. If the patient reaches the end of the promotional period without fully paying the balance, the card can add the accrued interest from the original purchase date. Now the patient does not just owe what remains, they owe what remains plus the interest that was waiting in the background. And if they are already financially strained, that new balance can keep generating more interest, more fees, more pressure, and more months of repayment. That is how a $2,000 hospital bill can become $3,500 or more. Not because the patient bought something frivolous, because the billing desk turned a medical balance into a credit product, and the credit product had a timer hidden inside it. The hospital bill was the injury. The credit product is the complication. Here is the question the industry hopes you never ask. If the provider had a payment plan, why was the bank's product easier to find? Ask yourself how many people hear no interest and mentally stop listening before the words "if paid in full" arrive. That is not a literacy problem. That is a design problem. The phrase is engineered to be heard one way and enforced another. CareCredit's legal defense is built into the paperwork. The terms disclose the deferred interest structure. The APR is in the agreement. The deadline exists. The promotional language includes conditions. That is why this channel exists. Because the most expensive sentence in America is often, "You agreed to the terms." They did not have to hide the mechanism. They just had to place it in a context where the patient was least equipped to process it. Look at when this happens. It can happen before insurance finishes processing a claim. That matters because the first number a patient sees may not be the final number. Insurance adjustments can change balances. Coding disputes can change balances. Provider errors can change balances. But if the patient puts the estimated amount on a credit card, the financial transaction has already happened. The bank does not care that the claim later changed. The card balance exists. Now the patient may have to chase refunds, credits, corrections, and insurance explanations while the credit card clock keeps running. And the clock is the point. A hospital payment plan can be boring. Boring is good. Boring means predictable monthly payments, no retroactive interest cliff, and maybe some room for financial assistance. A deferred interest medical credit card is not boring. It is a countdown. And countdowns change behavior. They make people anxious. They make people overpay when they can least afford it. They make people prioritize the promotional deadline over other bills because the penalty feels catastrophic. That is a very profitable form of fear. The product is not selling healthcare. It is selling time, and then charging a penalty if your life does not cooperate with the calendar. The bill is medical. The fear is medical. The pressure is medical. But the profit model is banking. That handoff is the whole story. Now let's talk about why providers participate. A hospital or medical practice is not necessarily staffed by villains twirling lanyards. The person offering the card may believe they are helping. They may have been trained to present it as a convenient option. They may be under pressure to collect balances. They may have scripts, workflows, software prompts, and targets. This is how systems launder responsibility. The bank says the provider presented the product. The provider says the patient chose it. The staff member says they were following the process. The patient says, "I thought it was a payment plan." and everyone points at the signature. Meanwhile, the money moved exactly where the system wanted it to move, from medical receivable to bank receivable, from patient confusion to financial obligation. And this is where the incentives become very clear. If the hospital or clinic offers you an in-house payment plan, the provider waits. It carries the account, it sends statements, it handles missed payments, it deals with collection risk. It may have to offer financial assistance, it may have to negotiate, but if the provider routes you to a credit card, the bank pays the provider. The provider is out. The patient is now the bank's problem. Except problem is the wrong word. From the bank's perspective, the patient is the product. CareCredit is not a charity program. It is a financial product. Synchrony Bank is not confused about how interest works. Deferred interest is not an accident that slipped into the agreement because someone in compliance had a long lunch. Deferred interest is the mechanism. The offer sounds generous because it uses the language of relief, special financing, promotional period, no interest if paid in full. But the structure is built around a cliff. Pay every dollar by the exact deadline and you may escape the interest. Miss by a dollar, miss by a day, misunderstand the promotional balance, or pay only the minimum shown on the statement without realizing it will not retire the balance in time, and the deal changes. The no-interest offer becomes a retroactive interest event. That is not a payment plan. That is a trapdoor with a calendar. The minimum payment keeps you in good standing. It does not necessarily keep you out of the trap. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't some financing better than no care? That is the strongest argument for these products, and it is worth taking seriously. There are patients who need treatment and do not have cash. There are providers who need to be paid. There are procedures that cannot wait for a perfect policy solution. Credit can bridge a gap. But here's why that argument is incomplete. A bridge can still be a toll road with spikes at the end. The question is not whether payment options should exist. The question is whether patients are being routed into high-cost deferred interest credit before lower-cost options are fully explained, before insurance is final, and before financial assistance is screened. That is not access. That is extraction wearing a badge that says access. The most revealing question is not, did they offer financing? It is, what did they fail to offer first? Because there is a difference between helping someone pay and helping someone borrow. Medical credit cards blur that difference deliberately. The provider's office becomes the sales floor. The bill becomes the purchase. The patient becomes the applicant. The illness becomes lead generation. And yes, that sounds harsh. It should, because the alternative is pretending this is just paperwork. Think about the patient's timeline. Day 1, procedure, pain, fear, confusion. Week 2, insurance explanation of benefits arrives, which is not a bill but looks like a bill because apparently American healthcare needed a practice invoice to terrify people. Month 1, first credit card statement. Month 6, maybe payments are happening. Month 12, other life expenses intervene. Month 18, promotional period ends. Then the deferred interest hits. By that point, the patient's medical event may feel like ancient history. The provider may barely be involved. The staff member who offered the card may not remember the conversation. The insurer may have closed the claim. But the bank's system remembers. The bank's system is excellent at remembering. It remembers the original transaction date. It remembers the promotional expiration. It remembers the APR. It remembers the balance. It remembers everything except the fact that this began with a person seeking medical care. That is what financialization does. It strips the original human context away and leaves only the enforceable obligation. The bank does not need to know your diagnosis. It only needs your balance. Here's what most people don't realize. This works because it exploits 3 things at once. First, authority bias. If a financial product is offered inside a medical office, patients are more likely to trust it because the setting feels legitimate. Second, cognitive overload. A patient dealing with pain, fear, insurance, scheduling, and medical instructions does not have the bandwidth to decode deferred interest. Third, present bias. No interest today feels more important than retroactive interest later, especially when the care is immediate and the penalty is months away. They did not just exploit confusion. They placed the confusing product exactly where confusion was guaranteed. And this is by design. The ugliest part is how ordinary the whole thing looks. No one has to raise their voice. No one has to lie in a dramatic way. The form can be accurate. The disclosure can be present. The staff member can be polite. The patient can be grateful. And still, the outcome can be predatory. That is what makes legal deception so hard to fight. It rarely looks like a scam in the moment. It looks like help. The patient leaves thinking the bill is handled, but really, the bill has been transformed. It has changed jurisdiction in their life. It used to belong to a medical provider where billing corrections, financial assistance, and in-house payment plans might exist. Now it belongs to a bank where the central question is whether the cardholder agreement allows the charge. And once the patient understands that, the emotional center of the story changes. This is not just about money, it is about betrayal, because healthcare relies on trust. You let strangers examine your body. You answer intimate questions. You sign forms you do not fully understand because the alternative is not receiving care. You believe at some basic level that the institution is supposed to help you. Then, inside that trust relationship, someone introduces a financial product that can punish you later for not understanding its timing mechanism. That is not the same as being sold a store card at checkout. At a store, the worst-case scenario is that you overpaid for a sweater. At a hospital, the worst-case scenario is that your fear becomes collateral. This is what makes the product so effective. It borrows the trust of healthcare and monetizes it like retail credit. The people most exposed are not the people with spare cash. They are the people with high deductibles, unstable income, chronic conditions, dental needs, vision needs, kids, elder care responsibilities, and little room for error. They are also people who may technically be insured. That matters because the phrase insured patient can hide enormous financial risk. A person can have insurance and still face a $2,000 bill. A person can have insurance and still be offered a medical credit card. A person can have insurance and still end up paying bank interest on a provider charge that might have been reduced, corrected, or put on a no-interest plan. Insurance does not protect you from financial product design. Sometimes it just adds another layer of confusion before the product is sold. And confusion compounds. A patient may not know whether the number is final. They may not know whether the provider is in network. They may not know whether a denial is appealable. They may not know whether financial assistance exists. They may not know that a promotional credit offer is deferred interest rather than waived interest. Each unknown makes the next signature easier. That is the exhaustion strategy. Not because one person sat in a boardroom and said, "Let's exhaust patients," because every part of the process adds friction except the part that opens the credit account. That part is smooth. Isn't that interesting? The system that cannot tell you what a procedure costs can process a financing application quickly. The system that sends bills from 3 different entities can present one button to pay with credit. The system that makes financial assistance paperwork feel like a scavenger hunt can make borrowing feel immediate. Friction is not evenly distributed. It clusters around the things that reduce revenue. It disappears around the things that accelerate collection. That is how you know what the system values. If the path to financial assistance is confusing and the path to credit is instant, that is not convenience. That is prioritization. Systems reveal their priorities by what they make easy. This system makes borrowing easy. And when a patient is offered CareCredit before insurance finishes processing, the timing is not a footnote. Timing is leverage. Before insurance is final, the patient does not know the real balance. Before financial assistance is screened, the patient does not know whether they owe the full amount. Before the pain is resolved, the patient does not feel free to walk away. And before the terms are understood, the bank may already have a new account. That is why choice is such a slippery word here. Yes, the patient may have chosen the card, but choices made under pressure, with incomplete information inside an institution you depend on for care, are not the same as choices made freely in a competitive marketplace. A legal signature can coexist with a manipulated environment. That is the part the paperwork will never admit. The paperwork says applicant. The reality says patient. The paperwork says promotional purchase. The reality says medical bill. The paperwork says deferred interest. The reality says financial ambush. And because this lies at the intersection of healthcare and consumer credit, it falls into a gap in how people understand harm. Medical billing advocates look at the provider. Consumer finance regulators look at the lender. Patients look at the balance. But the extraction happens in the handoff. The handoff is the business, from hospital to bank, from care to credit, from bill to loan. This is not just a medical debt story. It is not just a credit card story. It is what happens when 2 broken systems discover they can make each other more profitable. Medical debt already carries fear and confusion. Credit card debt already carries interest and penalties. Medical credit cards combine the emotional pressure of one with the financial mechanics of the other, and then they call it an option. Option is a funny word when the cheaper choices were never clearly placed on the table. Here's the thing. An option that quietly displaces a cheaper alternative is not neutral. If a provider once offered a low-cost payment plan and now prominently offers third-party financing, the patient did not gain freedom. The provider outsourced the debt. If a patient could have qualified for assistance but was routed to credit first, the patient did not receive convenience. The provider preserved revenue. If the promotional offer depends on the patient understanding deferred interest in a moment of medical stress, the product did not create transparency. It created plausible deniability. That is the legal architecture. They did not need to break the law. They needed the law to treat a hospital billing desk like any other checkout counter. But it is not any other checkout counter. The person at that counter may be in pain. They may be worried about a diagnosis. They may be trying not to cry in front of their child. They may be signing whatever gets them out of the building. And somewhere inside that moment, a bank can enter the room. That is the scandal. Not that credit exists, that credit can be sold as care. Remember the phrase from the beginning, take care of the bill today. Now it sounds different. At the beginning, that phrase sounded helpful. Now it sounds like the hinge of the entire scheme. Because take care did not mean resolve the burden. It meant move the burden. Move it from the provider to the bank. Move it from a medical bill to a credit card balance. Move it from a confusing but potentially negotiable obligation to a standardized contract with deferred interest. And once it moves, the patient's leverage shrinks. Calling the provider may not fix the card balance. Calling the bank may not reopen the medical bill. Calling insurance may not stop the promotional clock. Each institution can truthfully say part of the problem belongs to someone else. That is how complex systems defeat ordinary people, not by being impossible at every step. By making every step someone else's department, the patient becomes the project manager of their own financial harm, and the cost of managing it is time, energy, shame, and attention. Those costs do not show up in the APR, but they are real. The patient waits on hold, uploads documents, reads statements, searches for the promotional expiration date, tries to understand why the minimum payment is not enough, wonders whether paying rent or paying the card is the safer move, feels stupid, feels trapped, feels like the whole thing must be their fault because everyone else in the system sounds so calm. That calm is part of the injury. The machine never looks as panicked as the person it is processing. The system stays calm because panic is your job now. A $3,500 balance is not just a bill. It is proof that the system successfully converted fear into yield. And that is why the final bill feels so personal. A $2,000 charge becoming $3,500 is not just arithmetic. It is a message. It says your vulnerability had a price. It says the institution you trusted could introduce you to a lender and still call it help. It says the legal system is very good at recognizing consent on paper and very bad at recognizing pressure in real life. Now, what can you actually do with this information? Not in the motivational influencer sense. In the practical, I am standing at a billing desk and need a sentence to say sense. Here are the sentences that interrupt the funnel. First, is this an in-house payment plan with the provider or a credit card issued by a bank? That one sentence forces the distinction into the open. Second, has insurance fully processed this claim? If it is an estimate, say you want the final processed claim before putting anything on a credit product. Third, do you have a financial assistance or charity care policy, and can I be screened before I apply for financing? That sentence matters because it changes the order. Financial assistance and insurance processing should not come after high-interest credit. They should come before. Fourth, what exact amount must be paid by what exact date to avoid deferred interest? Not the minimum payment, not the current balance. The exact promotional payoff amount and the exact deadline. Because the minimum payment can keep the account current while still leaving you exposed to the retroactive interest trap. Do not ask, what payment options do you have? Ask, what cheaper options exist before the credit card? And if you already used one of these products, check the promotional expiration date, not just the minimum payment. Find the exact payoff amount needed to avoid deferred interest, not an estimate. The exact number, because $1 short can change the entire cost of the deal. And if the bill was wrong, insurance was not finished, or financial assistance was never explained, complain in writing to the provider and to the CFPB. Paper helps you. Silence helps the machine. So here is the verdict. The villain is CareCredit, owned by Synchrony Bank, and the broader point-of-care medical credit model that turns patients into borrowers before they fully understand the bill. The number is $3,500 or more. What a $2,000 medical balance can become when deferred interest, a roughly 26.99% APR fees, and continued repayment collide. The CFPB warned that medical credit cards can replace low or no-cost provider payment plans and increase the financial burden on patients. The National Consumer Law Center found advocates reporting patients who were not screened for financial assistance, not offered reasonable payment plans, or signed up before insurance had processed the account. And the defense is always the same. The terms were disclosed. Here's my problem with that. A disclosure handed to a sick person at the point of care is not the same thing as informed consent. A credit card offered by a medical provider is not the same thing as a payment plan. And no interest if paid in full is not the same thing as no interest. They did not break the law. They built a process where the law sees a signature, the bank sees a balance, the provider sees payment, and the patient sees betrayal. So ask the question before you sign, is this a payment plan with the provider, or is this a credit card issued by a bank? And ask the second question, have you screened me for financial assistance and waited for insurance to finish processing? Because if the answer is no, then the hospital bill may not be the real product. You may be. Has this happened to you? Were you offered CareCredit, Alpheon, or another medical financing product in a doctor's office, dental office, hospital, or clinic before you understood the final bill? Drop it in the comments. I want to know exactly how it was presented to you. Did they explain financial assistance first? Had insurance already processed the bill? Did the minimum payment actually pay it off in time? And what did the final amount become? Because I have a feeling a lot of people were told they were taking care of the bill today, and what they were really doing was opening the door to a much more expensive tomorrow. They didn't break the law, they wrote the payment flow, and like always, terms apply.